Hey dudes, today we are talking about the white cards from Alliances. Alliances is a pretty awesome set, and over the next few days we will be covering all of the colors individually, and then a video where I kind of talk about the set as a whole. So, I guess that's all I have. Um, Here we go. All right, so first we have Carrier Pigeons. Carrier Pigeons is an uncommon. No, it's a common. Sorry. Carrier Pigeons is a common. It is a 1/1 that costs 3 and a white. It has flying, and when you cast this, you draw a card at the beginning of the upkeep of the turn after Carrier Pigeons comes into play. So the next upkeep, you draw a card. To start with, this card looks very, very bad. It is a 4 mana 1/1 that slow trips you, but it does have flying. This card is very, very bad. However, if you are going to be doing a limited of alliances specifically, and maybe alliances Ice Age, it's pretty good too. But specifically, if you are just playing with alliances cards, this thing is kind of a fucking banger. This is a sleeper hit. It it looks very, very dumb, and it is very, very dumb. But flying is really, really fucking good in limited, especially around this time period of sets. Flying is especially valuable here. This thing, I don't know that I have dropped more than one game while playing this in my deck, assuming my deck wasn't complete garbage beyond this. Obviously, for this to be good, it does need some level of support, right? This is 4 mana for a chump blocker is pretty rough, but if you can get in the air, which you often can, this thing is very, very good. I won't say that there are no situations where this becomes bad, because if they have a 1/2 flyer, you're just fucking cooked. But you would be surprised at how valuable this stupid fucking card has been, at least in my personal experience while playing these games. This thing is crazy. The card advantage is slow, obviously. Like, this is not a constructed player, so, like, everything I'm saying about this card, do not, like, throw this into your commander deck expecting it to be okay. And definitely don't play it in 60 card. You'll be dead before you cast it. But in limited specifically, this is surprisingly useful. It's very nice. It replaces itself, which is already handy. The only downside to that is that if the game comes down to decking, then you've kind of fucked yourself. But assuming you can prevent that from happening, which you usually can in Alliances Limited, then this thing is kind of a beast. Honestly, it's a super good card. I am very fond of this card. Let's just say that. I think that's really all I have to say on it, though. There isn't much to the card, right? It's a slow trip, so that's kind of interesting. But otherwise, it's a 1/1 for 4 mana with flying. There isn't really a whole lot you can say, other than in this specific limited, this has been very valuable every time I have cast it. Well, there have been 2 times where it didn't really do anything, but I have cast it a lot more than 2 times. So it's pretty good. This is one of the commons that has 2 artworks by Pat Lewis or Pat Morrissey, whatever you want to say. It was Morrissey at the time, now it's Lewis. And the art is fantastic. I like the art a lot. I like the little Indiana Jones satchel that the pigeon has. I think that's quite fun. But yeah, I like this art quite a lot. This one is also okay, also done by Pat Lewis, Morrissey, whatever. I like the other one a lot better. I'm not quite certain why. This one is fine. It has some nice details in it, and it's fairly cool, but I prefer the other one personally. There's not too much else to say about this, so we'll just move right along to Errand of Duty. Errand of Duty is a common. This is an instant that costs 1 and a white mana, and you just create a night token. This is a 1/1 creature token with banding. So effectively, this is 2 mana instant, make a Banalish hero. Or I guess a Keldoran hero might be more apt in this situation. Um, yeah, so this is kind of interesting. In limited, this is pretty bad. At least in my personal experience, I've never come up to a situation where I was like, "Oh, thank God I have this." There aren't any synergies like there are today where you gain things for casting instants and sorceries. This is arguably pretty interesting. That like in Commander specifically, where you can kind of do some dumb things and play slow, you could set up some type of combo where you can loop this somehow, and where you gain advantages from creating, right? Like you could put this. I guess you could put this on an Isochron Scepter if you wanted to. In a wider card pool, this is kind of interesting, kind of like it's not a good card. It's a 2 mana 1/1 effectively, and you can't even really recur that 1/1. I mean, you kind of can if you can recur the card. You can just make another one, but you can't use like creature recurring techniques because it's a token. So when it hits the graveyard, it just exiles itself. And overall, this card is not good. In limited specifically, this card is very bad. I have not. If there is a situation where this card is good, I have not personally come across that situation. But it is very, very funny to make a 1/1 with banding, which is another thing that is going to be very, very hilarious in Commander. Commander players, as a general rule, have no fucking clue how banding works. So if you do, it can be quite valuable. Their threat assessment and ability to understand how you should play around banding is, in my experience, pretty lackluster. Of course, it depends on the group, right? Like if you're playing against some old heads, it might not be as smart of an idea to do that, especially if you are not 100% sure how banding works, because it can get a little complicated when you get into the nitty gritty of it. But overall, this card is interesting. It's not good though. Not really anywhere is this card good. I would not recommend worrying about this unless you specifically are just in the mood to make something funny happen with this, because there are definitely things you can do with this card. This is another card with 2 artworks done by Julie Barrow, and I like this art a lot. It has kind of a medieval classic feel to it. Not kind of in style, kind of not, but I really like it. I think it's very cool. Art like this on Magic cards really hits hard for me. It just makes the game feel more immersive, personally. But let's check out the other art. All right, and this is the other art, also done by Julie Barrow, and I like this one a lot too. This is another one. It has that same very cool style where it just feels like a medieval piece. It feels like something you could have seen drawn or painted rather at the time. I don't know how like historically accurate that is, what techniques she used. I don't know how true that is, but that's what it feels like, and I just really appreciate that. This art is also really cool. I actually don't really have a favorite between the two of them. I like them both a lot. I don't know. I can't really pick, but that's really all there is to say about this card. There's not much to it, so let's move on. Next, we have Exile. Exile is a rare. It costs 2 and a white. Remove target non-white attacking creature from the game. Gain life equal to that creature's toughness. Yeah, solid card. This is interesting because this is a card that is not particularly powerful these days. It's certainly not bad. But 3 mana to exile an attacking creature is not bad, especially if that creature costs more than 3 mana. So exile is certainly not nothing, and saw some competitive play back in the day. Quite efficient. I mean, not compared to like Swords to Plowshare and stuff like that, but properly balanced cards. This is fairly efficient. Only being able to activate it when they're attacking is kind of annoying. I don't really like stuff like that, but it does make the card more balanced. And because of that, you can't like hit their combo piece they have no intention of attacking with. So like, I wouldn't call this a good card by today's standards. I probably wouldn't recommend running it in Commander. You have just so many better options. But it's certainly not the worst card. But specifically in Limited, this is kind of a snap grab. Like, this is a rare, so you're unlikely to see this, but you probably should not pass this to an opponent. Most of your Limited games are going to come down to attacking. Depending on how it goes, it can come down to decking. It's certainly possible, but more likely than not, especially if one of you is running an exile, it's going to come down to attacking and stuff like that. I think that was a really, really solid card in Limited. It's a rare. You won't see it all that often. It's not something that like particularly shapes how the games are going to be played, because one person might have one copy of it in their deck, but it's a blowout when it happens. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this. It's a 3 mana Swords of Plowshare. This is pretty solid at the time. It's in this, and it's especially good specifically in limited. And this was illustrated by Rob Alexander. Interestingly enough, this artwork got shifted around. This card was originally called Marriage of Convenience, and the joke of it was not that you were being exiled to a tower like what's shown in Exile, but that you were that it was a marriage, that you were getting married off. The art was done by Phil Foglio. That art now appears on, oh, what's the card called? Is it called Marriage of Convenience? Unlikely Alliance. That's what it's called. Um, the art appeared on Unlikely Alliance instead, which is just kind of interesting. I guess I should also mention that this is likely where we get the term exile from, which is now a keyword and just means to remove it from the game. But you all probably knew that. Anyway, I like the art. This card is interesting. It's pretty cool. It's pretty solid. There's not much else to say about this, so we'll just skedaddle on, shall we? Wow, we are having good luck with the order of these cards. We have a lot of exciting things to talk about. Inheritance is an uncommon enchantment. It costs 1 white mana, and you can pay 3 mana to draw a card, but you can only use this ability when a creature is put into the graveyard from play, and only once for each creature put into the graveyard. So this is pretty sweet. One, I don't know how much play this still sees in Commander, but this was one of the ways of like gaining some level of card advantage, or at least replacing your stuff in Commander long before they started designing for it, because back then it was very, very hard for white to ramp or gain any sort of card advantage other than stuff like land tax and stuff like that. Inheritance is a pretty interesting card. Super great in Commander. It's not really that good anywhere else. Interestingly, you can do some combo stuff with this. This is pretty funny. If you were to do Enduring Renewal that's from Ice Age, I think, right? That's not in this set. I think that's from Ice Age. Enduring Removal, if that shows up later in this set, I guess I just look like an idiot, but I'm pretty sure that's from Ice Age. That is an interesting combo card where whenever a creature goes to your graveyard, you put it in your hand, but every time you would draw a card, you have to reveal what you draw, and then if it is a creature, it goes into the graveyard. Basically, the idea of it is that you get to keep using the creatures you have, but you don't get any more. But obviously, you don't play that card fair. What you do is you have like an Ashnod's Altar or something like that. Specifically with Ashnod's Altar, Enduring Renewal, and Inheritance, if you have one or two, like Ornithopter or a Kobold, a zero cost creature, with the Ashnod's Altar and the Enduring Renewal, you can cast and then continuously sack the Ornithopter, and then you can, while you're doing that, since you're making a bunch of mana, you can draw out your whole deck and make infinite mana with those 4 cards. Super easy to do. But the point is that there is some combo applications. There's probably better combos for this too. That's just the one that pops up at the top of my memory. This card again isn't what I would call good for like combo applications, but it is interesting. You certainly can do that, and I think it's pretty funny in Commander. I like this card a lot. This was illustrated by Kaya Folio. I'm a huge Kaya fan. I love her art a lot, and this one is quite wonderful. It's very fun. It's not a real departure from her style, but a little bit. I don't know. I like it. I think it's well done. I think it's quite cool. That's all I have on Inheritance, though. So let's continue on. Ivory Gargoyle is a rare 2/2 that costs 4 and a white mana. It has flying, and if Ivory Gargoyle is put into the graveyard from play, put it into play under owner's control at end of the turn and skip your next draw phase. The wording on this is really interesting because I'm pretty sure how it works out is whoever controls it like activates this whole thing, but they switch from owners to you, and so it kind of feels like maybe there's a situation where they could do that and then you skip your draw step. With like a control magic or something. I don't think that's how it works, but it is kind of funny to think about the wording of it being a little ambiguous in that way. This card is bad. This card is very bad. This is a 5-mana 2/2 with flying, and it doesn't even draw you a card. It coming back into play is really solid, And this is interesting because in limited, this can be very, very valuable and it can be very, very good. And there are situations where it is awful and the worst thing ever. It does have a safety valve where you can decide, okay, I'm just going to get this card out of the game so that it doesn't keep coming back and I keep skipping my draw step. But 5 mana to do that is a lot. Realistically, it should have been 0 mana to do that. I think personally, maybe that would be broken too in some way. Who cares, right? Anyway, Ivory Gargoyle is very bad. This is a very bad card. It's even pretty bad in limited. It's not awful in limited. This has definitely helped me win a game. But there is a lot of risk with this. Whereas, so like, you can kind of look at this sort of similar to Carrier Pigeon because that's a fucking 4 mana 1/1 flyer. But there are quite a few differences. Obviously, that replaces itself immediately. This is sort of pseudo card advantage, kind of, because if it gets removed, it comes back. But it's also not because then you skip your draw step. So they're like, no, you're not getting this for free. You either get this back or you get to draw your card. And if you want to draw your card, you better pay 5 fucking mana as this before this goes to the graveyard, or you're fucked. So again, it's pretty obvious this card is bad. I have played it in limited and it has worked out, but and I've also but I don't play it very often in limited. One, it's a rare, so you often don't see it, and it's very bad. So even if it is a rare, it kind of has to get wheeled to you to have any chance of playing it because there is almost certainly something better in that pack than this. But if it comes to it and you have to play it, it can be okay. I've never had the fail state where I just get like super fucked and have to pay the mana so that I can draw a card and figure out some other out. I've never actually been in that situation, but it seems kind of likely and is very, very scary to me personally. But yeah, that's Ivory Gargoyle. It's a terrible fucking card, but it is kind of interesting. It was illustrated by Quentin Hoover. The art is quite nice on this. It's simple, which is kind of cool, and it's very bright. There aren't too many colors. I don't know. It looks nice for a white card. But this card is terrible. Don't play it. But then we have Juniper Order Advocate. This is an uncommon 1/2. It costs 2 and a white mana. And as long as Juniper Order Advocate is untapped, all green creatures you control get +1/+1. Yeah, this is pretty solid. This is something I would even consider running in a low power commander deck these days, assuming you were running green creatures. It is pretty solid in limited if you are playing white-green, which is not a terrible thing to play because you can play white for its flyers and then you can play green for its big ground creatures and you kind of just have the game on lock from there. I can't. Most of that's theoretical. I've only actually had this in my deck a few times, and every time I did, I only drew white creatures. So I can't fucking actually tell you how cool that +1/+1 is, because I don't know that it's ever come up, even when I've been playing a majority green deck. I have only drawn it a couple times though, so like, uh, but yeah, this is from a limited standpoint, it's fine. It's a low pick rate. Like I wouldn't be jumping on this, but it's not terrible, especially if it comes up and you know for a fact that you're going to be in green and white. And green and white are pretty solid colors to be in. The big creatures in green are pretty nice low end or late game rather. But yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say about this one. There isn't much here. Juniper Order Advocate was illustrated by Douglas Schuler, and I love this piece a lot. Fantastic work, Douglas. You can tell Douglas is very much improving on his techniques through these earlier sets, and personally, I just find that such a joy to watch and look at. But yeah, I don't have much else to say about that. All right, next we have another common. This is Keldoran Escort. This is a 2/3 that costs 2 and 2 white mana. It's a common, and it has banding. This is fine. It's not great. I generally don't grab this because one, mono white is probably not where you want to be in limited, and this card has no value anywhere outside of limited. I mean, I guess if you want to play every banding card you can get your hands on to mess with your playgroup, there is value that this is one of the relatively low number of cards that have banding on them. They used it a lot back in the day. It's not like there are zero cards with banding on it, but they don't do banding anymore. So there's not a whole lot of them. Um, but yeah, other than that, there's really not much value here. The two white pips in this is pretty rough. Banding is pretty fucking annoying to deal with, especially in limited, just because of the state that the game gets into. And I will say there's quite a bit of value in a bander with like 3 toughness. It locks them down for longer, because when you have banding, you can't, or when your opponent has banding, you cannot favorably attack unless you will probably have to sacrifice a decent amount. But if you can force them to kill something, it can work out. But that means that they have to attack into that means that they have to have something that they don't value. If they have one stupid 1/1 that they can band everything into, don't fucking attack into them. So like the only time you can really attack into banders like this is if every piece of their board is incredibly valuable and you don't particularly care which piece goes, and you have at least as much power as the highest toughness. So like if they have this 2/3 bander out and a couple of 2/2s, and you have 3 or 4 power, and you have 3 power, if they have 2/2s in this, that's not going to work, because they can go 1/1/1 and your attack does nothing. But if they only have 2 out, a 2/2 and a 3/3, and you have 4 power out, something is dying, because they have to distribute 4 between to a 2/2 and a 3/2, or 2/3 rather, and they can put 2 safely into the Keldoran Escort, so that it doesn't die, but they still have 2 more power to distribute, which will have to go to the 2/2 or to this, and so something is losing. That's how you figure out if you can actually like favorably attack into this. It's very fucking complicated, and often you're going to be like, you got to be very careful. There are not many opportunities to favorably attack into banding, is the point that I'm trying to make here. So there's definitely some value here with that, because banding is a particularly strong keyword. But yeah, I guess that's really all I have to say on this one. It's not great. Even in limited, I'm not a huge fan of it, but there's definitely some value to it if you know how banding works. The art was done by Brian Walkowitz, and the art's the best part of this card. In fact, I've been itching to talk about the art since we got to this card. Look at this. This is fantastic. He's just riding a dog. I love this so much. It's great. The dog has a little coat on. It's great art. Cards like this are fantastic. But there's 2 arts for this, so let's look at the other one. He's such a good boy. Oh, I love the little coats. This art is equally great. Both of them just knights on big dogs, and I love that so much. Fantastic art all around. But that's it for Keldoran Escort, so let's move on. Then we have Keldoran Home Guard. This is a 1/6 that costs 3 and a white. It is an uncommon, and at the end of any combat in which Keldoran Home Guard attacked or blocked, put a -0/-1 counter on Keldoran Home Guard and put a Deserter token into play. Treat this token as a 0/1 white creature. So this one is really interesting because it's very, very different than what you normally see. You can create tokens with it, which is really, really cool. It is telling a fantastic story. Like, this is a very, very cool card just from the flavor alone. Cards like this are kind of magical and fun in that way. I would say this card is probably not great. This is one I actually haven't really had a chance to test with, so I'm not super positive, but I don't value it too much. I do think it is kind of interesting. I don't know what sort of combo applications or anything it would have, because you do kind of have to go through some hoops to create the Deserter token. And I don't know, like, if the token is actually valuable. Personally, I think the card would, unless you are doing something with the tokens or something like that, I think it would be more valuable if it didn't have this ability, because a 1/6 can truck into a lot. Like, it's not, if you have like if you have some way of like pumping its power or something like that when they block it, because it looks like a safe block, you can get some value done with it that way. That being said, like it's very interesting. I like this card a lot. I haven't gotten to play with this one enough to really tell you what you could do with it, but it is a card that feels interesting and like there are things you could do with it. It's not great though. At least not in this set specifically. There's not too many synergies that I can think of off the top of my head, but it's such a cool idea for a card. Keldoran Homeguard was illustrated by Andy Russo, and I like the art. Andy's stuff is really interesting. I like it a lot. And this one is quite well done. But that's really all I have on this one. Speaking of ways to pump your power, here's Keldoran Pride. Keldoran Pride is a common enchanted creature that costs 1 and a blue. Enchanted creature gets +1, +2, and then you could pay 2 and a blue, switch Keldoran Pride from one creature it enchants to another creature. Keldoran Pride's new target must be legal. Treat Keldoran Pride as though it were just cast on the new target. The rules have changed on this. You no longer treat it as though, like, I'm not even sure what that means. Treat it as though you just cast it. Like, it's an enchantment. It doesn't have, like, summoning sickness or anything. Does that mean put it back on the stack so it can get countered? I don't know what that last line means, but they took that off there. You pay 2 and a blue to attach this to a different creature. This thing has one much like the pigeon, and in fact, this goes really good with Carrier Pigeon, turning it into a 2/3. But this card has won me a lot of games of limited, and I'm kind of fucking mad about it because it's such an ass card. Like, I look at the first time I looked at this card, I was like, this thing sucks. This might be the worst card in the set, and it's not the worst card in the set. If there is not, like, in limited and stuff like that, there's not like a shit. Everyone's not rocking 4 disenchants, right? And 4 lightning bolts or whatever the fuck else could deal with it. But even if you aren't running blue, like I've run this in decks where I just had no blue mana, 0 way of actually using that ability, and as a 2 mana holy strength, it's still fucking good enough to get you across the finish line. So yeah, like in limited, this is a bit of a sleeper. Like you don't have to force this. Like, and you're probably losing fucking games if you're like pack one, pick one in Keldoran Pride. But this thing is gonna get passed to you every fucking time because it's ass, and then it's gonna actually work out. If you're in enough white, you can play this, and it's gonna be better than some other things that you can play. It's surprisingly like how valuable creature enchantments are, because creature enchantments in general are really bad, because if the creature gets destroyed or blown up, you're 2-for-1ing yourself. It's generally such a bad trade-off, especially in hyper efficient play. But in limited, like, they ain't fucking removing shit, dude. So cards like this are quite a bit more valuable in those situations. Yeah, I guess that's all I really have on how the card works. Like, the ability to swap it is cool, and certainly can come up, and that does make this a little bit better. So this card is surprisingly good. Specifically in limited, it's terrible everywhere else. Do not play this. It's the common, so there's 2 arts done by Kaya Folio, and this is fantastic. It kind of feels like, at least to me, that she was inspired by Susan Van Camp style. Susan does these dumb, like, fucking big old face in the background kind of things all the time. But this is so fucking funny to me. It's such a hilarious piece of art. I can't take it seriously. And initially I did not like it, but it has grown on me like a fucking fungus. But yeah, Keldoran Pride. This art, very fucking funny. The other art is equally funny though. It's got the nice little juxtaposition. The first one's the daytime, the second one's the nighttime, and then the first one has a bird. This one has a bear. Opposites. Oh man. Yeah. Great work. Very, very fucking hilarious. And I don't know. It's got a nice sense of whimsy to it, I suppose. It's so fucking funny. To the next common. This is Martyrdom. Martyrdom is an instant that costs 1 and 2 white mana. Until end of turn, you may redirect to target creature you control any amount of damage. Yeah, this card sucks. So they do these kind of things. Sometimes it's similar to like Simulacrum from Alpha, and there's an alpha creature, Veteran Bodyguards too. This kind of thing has been around since the beginning of the game, and in my experience, it's never good. It's never like actually worth the card to do this. There are so many cards that you can use to like do this same thing, but that also have other uses, right? Like a single flying creature can block pretty much anything that you are going to run across in this. And so like any damage you take from that will be fine. Otherwise, you could just fucking counter the spell if it's a damage spell. Obviously, there are some uses to this, and if you're just mono white, you're gonna struggle to counter that. But you could also just use a fucking Circle of Protection then, or like reverse damage or something like that. This is, I don't want to say it's awful. I have in zero situations have I ever found a use to use this though. I've never activated this card. I have no idea. Like maybe. I've either just won or lost the game with the cards that I had. So maybe I'm wrong, and maybe this is actually more valuable than I think so, but I would not fucking risk it. It's not versatile at all. There's not much else to say about it. It is flavorful, I guess, if we want to talk about that. Like what the story that this card is telling is good. So I appreciate the card for that. But even in limited, it's pretty awful. Again, this set wasn't really designed for limited. They're getting to the point where they're paying more attention to it, and the next few sets that are coming out are going to be designed around limited. And even back then, they were kind of. We're getting to the point. This set it plays limited fairly well. It's a little slow and kind of boring. But most of the pieces you would need for a limited are there, and they're pretty close to the right ratios. Not exactly how they would design it these days, but it's certainly not an awful experience. But this was illustrated by Mark Poole. It's a common, and there are two versions of this art. There is this one, which I like. I think it's quite nice. And this one, which is my favorite, because this is just... the dude's down, but it's telling a good story. This is one of those ones where like this art, oh, he's down, and this art, he's like, don't worry guys, I got you. And then what happened? Zonks. But these are great. Mark Poole did really understood the assignment with the alternate arts here. These two very much are awesome. It's very cool. I like this. I think it's well done. But like I said, the card itself sucks, so we'll move on to Noble Steeds. Yeah, a Noble Steed. So Noble Steeds is a common enchantment. It costs 2 and a white mana, and you can pay 1 and a white, and target creature gains first strike until end of turn. So this is pretty sweet. It's playing into this was obviously before horsemanship, which they don't like to use all that often anyway, but throughout Magic, they have had different ways of like implying that, horse-mounted combat is different, right? There's the horsemanship is the most loudest, but there's also flanking. Flanking is usually represented by somebody on a horse when they use that, which is another one they don't really use anymore. But first strike can also be. Usually first strike is like either archers or like lances, spears, some sort of long pointy thing that's going to get there before they do. But often with the lances, those ones are on horseback, so it kind of makes sense here. And it's worth noting, like at this point in the game, horsemanship did not exist, and neither did flanking. So really, they didn't really have a way of like expressing the difference with horse combat other than first strike, which does work because if you're on a horse, you're faster. So I don't know. I think it's fine. I think it makes perfect sense. Overall, it's all right. Most of my playing of this set has been on Forge, so I specifically play against the Forge AI. In those instances, it can be pretty useful because they won't really understand that you can give it first strike sometimes. Sometimes it seems like it does. I don't know, like but this card gets more value than I think it probably should. But even if you're just like even if you were like back in the day playing at an LGS against somebody, this is very, very annoying because it really changes blocker math. I can't fucking talk. This card really changes blocker math especially if you are swinging in with a bunch of things and only have a couple, and depending on how much mana you have, it really, really puts a lot of extra pressure on the person blocking to figure out how they can effectively block in a way where they don't just lose all their shit. So depending on what the board state is, something like this can be incredibly valuable. I would say this is pretty neat. It's definitely not like constructed good or anything like that, but I, I wouldn't laugh at you if you put this in a commander deck, honestly. Like depending on what the goal of the deck was, but if you went really wide, this is kind of interesting in those situations, especially if like you're a go wide enchantress deck and you can like draw a card off of having the enchantment or some other value to it. On its own, it's probably not worth it to do anything with, but it has some there's interesting. It's not nothing, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to. And on top of it not being nothing, it was illustrated by Rebecca Gua, and her art is phenomenal. She's one of the better artists, especially at this time, and her style is very unique and really, really brings forth that kind of special vibe that Magic Art had at the time, right? Just like Phil and Kaya Folio have a very, very unique and interesting styles, and Quentin Hoover has a very unique and interesting style. All these art, like a lot of them. Pool's style is pretty interesting, and I could just list all of them. We're gonna stop now. The point is the art is great. It's very fantastic, and I think Magic is richer when she does artwork for it, which she does often, and Magic is richer for it. But we have two arts here. The other one is this one, which is also nice. I do prefer the first one a little bit. Not particularly sure why. This one is fine. It doesn't really spark the same level of joy for me, but Rebecca's work is great. Let's continue on, shall we? To reinforcements. Yeah, reinforcements. This is another common. It is an instant. It costs 1 white mana, and put up to 3 target creature cards from your graveyard on top of your library in any order. There are situations where this can be pretty good, and limited is certainly one of those situations, especially if you're worried about the possibility of losing to decking, because this is very valuable to stop you from being decked. Beyond that, all this does is if you have 3 creatures in your graveyard that you're very confident are better than any card you could possibly draw for the next 3 turns, it might be worth it spending a card and 1 mana to get those creatures back. But those creatures are in the graveyard in limited, and there is not a whole lot of targeted removal, so it doesn't I've never been in a situation where I had 3 creatures that could like drastically affect the course of this particular limited game, and they were all in the graveyard and I wanted them back and was willing and able to cast them. It's just never happened to me. I think it's more likely that like you play this when your strategy is to deck them. Because in those situations this is actually pretty funny and you can do that. But interestingly enough, they even knew that this wasn't always a good thing to be doing, because there's misinformation is a card that does literally the opposite. It does the same thing, but it does it to your opponent, and it costs 1 black mana. So like, is this a good thing to be doing? Well, since you're picking the creatures and you can put bad creatures on for that one and good ones for this one, yes. But again, there are situations where this is not good, and I have, like I said, I've never been in I've been in one situation where it was coming close to deck out, where I was like, man, I should have put 1 copy of Reinforcements in my fucking list, but it didn't actually come up even in that game. So like I said, it's not good. It's a pretty garbage card. I wouldn't play this for any reason ever. I guess maybe it's really funny in Commander. Maybe you can do some stupid shit. And maybe there's a fucking combo I'm not thinking of or don't know, but like the quality and effect of what you get for a card and 1 mana is not really worth it here. Yeah, I don't know. It is kind of interesting. Either way, let's move on. This was illustrated by Diana Vick, and it's neat. It's cool. I think this is the first set Diana did. I don't know that I've ever said that name out loud. I like it. It's interesting. It's a very classic Magic style with kind of, I don't know, but we got the Avengers in this one, which is pretty fucking funny to me. Very very Avenger coded. Yeah, I don't know. I like the art. I like her style. I don't really have anything particularly interesting to say about it though, so we'll check out the other one. And yeah, this one's pretty good too. Again, the style is interesting. It's very nice. It's very cool. I don't really have anything particularly interesting to say about this one. I like the other one a little bit better, but they're both basically the same and they're perfectly fine. All right, next we have Reprisal. Reprisal is a common. It is an instant that costs 1 and a white mana. Destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. This card is pretty fucking awesome. Incidentally, this seems much better than it is in Limited specifically, because there just aren't a whole lot of creatures that you're going to get a hold of with 4 or more power. And maybe it's just my luck, but usually I end up looking at 1 or 2 of these in my hand while I'm getting run over by 3/3s is what you is my usual experience with this, but this is certainly an awesome card. I think this is pretty solid in Commander specifically because you're more likely to see a creature that big, and this is an instant, so you can activate it as they're swinging at you or after they increase something's power from whatever they're doing. So there's a lot more targets for it per se outside of limited, but it is not the best single target removal. You have way better options. It is cheap though, so if you want something that is relatively cheap, this is pretty solid and kind of a it's definitely pretty good. And the situations where it is good, it's like a blowout. Like this card alone can win you the game if the circumstances line up. I say it's kind of bad and it usually doesn't come up, but I still pretty much grab it whenever I see it. This card is interesting. It's a common, so it does kind of shape the meta of this environment quite a lot and does kind of lower the value of the really big creatures, of which there are not many of. It's pretty solid, but like there's maybe 10 targets that you can hit with this. There are a decent number of creatures with over 4 power. Most of them are in green. There's a couple of multicolored ones. Black has a few. Red's got a couple. But like Deadly Insect we'll talk about when we get to the green cards. That's a 6/1, but that has Shroud, so you can't hit that. And then there's also Limdale's Paladin, I think it's called. If you block it, it gets +6/+3, so you can block it and then reprisal it because it will then be targetable by reprisal. And with the Juniper Order thing that makes a lot of 3/3s into 4/4s, and there's a green creature that also gives the green creatures +1/+1. So with stuff like that going around, reprisal can come up. It is less often than you would maybe assume. It's very, very good when it comes up, though. This is a solid card. I would grab these up if I was planning on playing a lot of the bigger creatures, but there are a lot of copies of this, and this kind of just incentivizes you to avoid playing the bigger creatures. I've successfully managed to cast 1 fucking Feldigriff, and it was immediately reprisalled, which was super cool. I was very, very happy I put all the effort into making that work just to get kicked in the dick. But yeah, Reprisal is a great card, at least in the context of limited. But it's not a perfect card. There are plenty of situations where this will do fucking nothing, and you'll just look at it as you lose the game. So keep that in mind, I suppose. Yeah, anyway, Reprisal was illustrated by Randy Faith, and the art's really funny. There's 2 arts. This one is really, really hilarious. It's especially kind of funny because there's the person's got taken out by the big creature, and I can't imagine that dude that's down is 4 power. Not that it's implying that this card took him out. Obviously, it's implying they took out the creature, and that's just explaining the loss that you might have seen. So yeah, but it is kind of funny. Anyway, there are 2 arts for this one. There's this one and this one, which they are effectively the same thing. This one I think I like a little bit better. This creature's just funnier. The art's cool for them, but that's all I have. So let's move on to Royal Decree. This is a rare. It is an enchantment. It costs 2 and 2 white mana. It is cumulative upkeep of 1 white mana, which means that you put a H counter on this at all of your upkeeps, and then you have to pay a white mana per each H counter. So the first time it's 1, then it's 2, then it's 3, then it's 4, yada yada. Whenever a swamp, mountain, black permanent, or red permanent becomes tapped, Royal Decree deals 1 damage to that permanent's controller. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so it's basically kind of like worse karma, but it hits black and red. So hitting both colors makes this a little bit more valuable. The cumulative upkeep means it's not gonna sit around for too long, which does make this kind of worse because it's still pretty good, but they can just hold off until you can't pay for this anymore, or you put yourself into a rough position like paying for it until they're ready. It's not terrible. And if you are playing against someone who is black red specifically, this is pretty fucking rough. But if they are black and or red and another color, or they're three color and they have anything else they can do, this might end up setting you back more than it sets them back. This is a rare. Did I mention that? It's a rare. Yeah, I don't know. I've never played this because it's in my sideboard and I forget to side it in game two. But yeah, it certainly seems decent enough. I like color hate that is not super just lights out if you happen to be those colors. And I do appreciate color hate that hits both enemy colors because then it's just more likely to be any sort of relevant at all, less likely to be a dead card. Still, it's color hate, so it's often going to be a dead card, and the cumulative upkeep is certainly rough. This won't stick around for too long, and these games can be really slow. It is possible this ends up doing nothing but setting you back a few turns. I mean, it'll set them back too if they avoid tapping things so they don't have the damage dealt to them. It's certainly not bad, but it's certainly not strong. I would be really bummed if this was the rare I opened. It was illustrated by Pete Venters. The art is okay. It's not my favorite Pete Venters work by a long shot, but it's fine. Next, we have Royal Herbalist. This is a common 1/1, costs 1 white mana. You can pay 2 and remove the top card of your library from the game to gain 1 life. Yeah, this thing sucks. It's, in my opinion, not great. It is interesting, I guess, if you had like infinite mana and a fucking Laboratory Maniac or Thassa's Oracle in your hand. If you had like a Library Maniac and a cantrip, or like a Thassa's Oracle in your hand, and infinite mana, you could use this to rip out your whole library to win the game that way. So I don't want to say this is nothing. You could do some really stupid, shitty, funny things with it, but like, whatever, right? Like infinite mana, there's so many better things to do with it. It's such a dumb setup. It's not efficient. But it is pretty fucking funny. I do not like this card in limited. I always end up with a couple because it always gets passed to me, and if I'm in white, it usually ends up in the list, and then I draw it, and it's the worst feeling in the fucking world. It's just a 1 mana 1/1, which isn't like the worst thing in the world, but pretty fucking close. And the ability, my problem with the ability is in limited that like obviously you often have a bunch of extra mana in the late game, at least in these limited games. Just a lot of draw land, play, pass, stare at each other's boards that are unfavorable to attack into. And in those situations, like, sure, you have the mana to do this, and like, if the life gain will help you win the game, sure. But otherwise, you're just bringing yourself closer to decking, which is very, very dangerous to be doing. So I would not recommend playing this pretty much anywhere. I guess if you wanted to do something really, really funny in Commander, you could get infinite mana, put this down, and exile your library. But like, there's also like way easier fucking ways to do that. Like, there's Leveler, whatever it's called, like, or just like fucking Tainted Pack or Demonic Consulate. There's way easier ways to do this. This is not efficient in any way, but I guess it's kind of funny. Uh, anyway, this is two arts for this. This was illustrated by Douglas Schuler. This art is pretty good. I like it. Douglas Schuler's work is fun, and this one is okay. And this is in many ways kind of very similar. Obviously, not. It's two different characters. One's male, one's female, and they're holding different things in different ways. But it's the same to me. I really don't have. I don't feel a difference or have a preference between the two. So we'll just leave it at that and move on to the next one, shall we? Oh my god, it's Scars of the Veteran. This is an uncommon instant that costs 4 and a white mana. You may remove a white card in your hand from the game instead of paying Scars of the Veteran's casting cost. Prevent up to 7 damage to target creature or player. For each 1 damage, to a creature prevented by Scars of the Veteran, put a +0/+1 counter on that creature until end of turn. You don't even have to pay 1 life to pitch this. Holy fuck, busted. All right, so Scars of the Veteran is part of the pitch cycle in Alliances, and is by and large the worst one. Um, that's not to say this is necessarily super awful, and it can be super annoying and very, very funny if you manage to chump block a really big thing with like a banding creature and just make it like a fucking plus, or make it like a 1/8 or something stupid. There are situations where this can get kind of out of hand. And it's pretty decent for limited, assuming you're playing enough white to play it. Uh, but it's bad. Like it's pretty bad. It's a very, very specific situation where it does anything at all, and the ability to pitch something and not like pay the mana cost for it is pretty nice. But this card sucks. It's bad. It's not good. I don't know what else to really say about this one. I've definitely seen it come up, kind of. I guess it's not super awful. You can like prevent up to 7 damage from like a fireball or something. Not really in this limited. Or like you could save yourself from a lightning bolt, but you're down 2 cards to do that, and it's not good. It's not good. So we won't cope about this any longer. This was illustrated by Dan Frazier. Love it. The art is fantastic. It's pretty well done. It is interesting. The orange background is very noticeable. It's like you can very easily pick this card out. You don't see too much of that much orange in white cards, not usually, unless it's like the setting sun or something like that, or off the plains or something. But yeah, this one is interesting. It's not bad, or well, it is bad. The art isn't bad. Let's move on. There's nothing to say about this one. It's the worst pitch cycle. Anyway, then we have Seasoned Tactician. Seasoned Tactician is an uncommon 1/3 that costs 2 and a white mana. You may pay 3 and remove the top 4 cards of your library from the game to prevent all damage to you from one source. Wow. It's like if Royal Herbalist was even worse. Um, I don't know. I guess if you're trying to remove your whole library, this one is more mana efficient, assuming it's in multiples of 4. Although I think you can remove. Actually, I don't know how that works. Whatever, that's stupid. Don't do that. Yeah, I don't like this one. It's an uncommon. It's a very, very bad card. I think this is the worst card we've talked about. A 1/3 for 3 mana is kind of a joke, actually. It's not good. I got nothing on this one. This card sucks. It was illustrated by Dan Frazier. The art is very funny. It's definitely not my favorite Frazier piece by a long shot, but it's perfectly serviceable. Pretty mediocre card. And yeah, it's a pretty mediocre card. Let's move on. To Sustaining Spirit. This is a rare. It is a 0/3 creature that costs 1 and a white mana, and it has a cumulative upkeep of 1 and a white. Any damage that would reduce your life total to less than 1 instead reduces it to 1. This can be an incredibly annoying fucking card to play against, in limited specifically. This is not what I would call a good card per se, but it is kind of interesting. It's we've seen this effect before. It was on it's very similar to the effect of Ali from Cairo from Arabian Nights, except now it's in white, which makes a lot more sense. This is definitely a more white ability than a red one. This card has uses. You definitely can do some funny things with it, especially if you're like doing something like Hurricane or Earthquake, or one of the spells that deals equal damage to everyone. But if a spell that does damage to everyone and doesn't deal damage to this would work. If you're just like eating damage to the face in limited, there's really like there's so little you can fucking do if this comes down. You just kind of have to wait until they can't cumulative upkeep for it. So if you get one of these, just play a couple extra cards in your deck so they deck out first, or like play reinforcements or something, and you can just, assuming you get enough big things and removal and stuff like that, you can just deck them out. Super fun, super exciting. If you're going to do that, you do have to kind of do a bit of mental math though, with like how much lands you need, how much mana. And so it's like um Commander, this is kind of interesting because you can bounce it. So like the cumulative upkeep is annoying, but you can deal with that by like bouncing it or doing something else. There are ways around that. So this is certainly something that could see some Commander play, but it is still pretty niche. So yeah, I don't know. It's decent. It seems like a really powerful effect, but it is on a very easy to deal with body, and the cumulative upkeep more than balances this out, in my opinion. I don't think this is an unfair card at all. It has, on exactly one occasion, been really annoying to play against, but otherwise it has done nothing. But yeah, I don't know. That's all I have on this one. Illustrated by Rebecca Gua, and the art is amazing. I love the art on this one a lot. She has a very, very fantastic style, and I think this card showcases it well. But let's continue on. All right, then we have Sworn Defender, another rare. This is a 1/3 creature that costs 2 and 2 white mana. You can pay 1 mana, change Sword Defender's power to the toughness of target creature blocking or being blocked by Sword Defender -1 until end of turn. Change Sword Defender's toughness to 1 plus the power of that creature until end of turn. You following that? Oh, what a dumb card. So when you attack into this thing, they can pay 1, and if you attack with like a 3/3, this becomes a 2/4 effectively is what's happening. This one is interesting. There's definitely like stupid tricky things you can do with it, and I will say that if you drop this and let your opponent read it, it might you might gain advantage just because they will be like, well, what the fuck are you gonna do with this? Uh, and they have to like double and triple check all of their blocker or attacking math before doing anything. So I guess there's some like strategic value in the cognitive load you're placing on your opponent by playing such a fucking confusing and confounding card. But it's not good. It's pretty funny though. Beyond that, I don't know. I don't have anything to say about it. It was illustrated by D. Alexander Gregory, and the art's nice. The clouds are very well done. I really appreciate them. Plus the wetlands in the background. It's very nice. It's a nice looking card. Yeah, where it's an unlikely alliance. So this is the art that was originally on Exile, as I mentioned then. I love this art so much. Foglio is such a fucking classic. What a Chad. But we'll get to the art. Anyway, this is an enchantment. It is an uncommon. It costs 1 and a white mana, and you can pay 1 and a white mana. Target non-attacking, non-blocking creature gets +0/+2 until end of turn. The non-attacking, non-blocking clause is a little bit weird because depending on like what you're trying to do, you can just activate this earlier. You can activate this in your main phase before you go to combat, so that your creature that you're going to attack with gets the +0/+2. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess it prevents you from being super tricky about it, but I think you can even like activate it after attackers are declared before blockers are declared if you're blocking, um, and activate it then. It's interesting. It's a weird thing to add there. I don't know what it actually does for the card because the card itself is not particularly good. It's not awful in limited. Like this actually does have some use. The activation cost is expensive for what you're getting, kind of. I love the art, but as far as cards go, this one is a little confounding as far as like what you would even want to do with it. But it's not the worst card. Wild Astaire is a common. It is a 1/1 that costs 2 and a white mana. It is flying and first strike, and you can pay 2 white mana to give it +2/+0 until end of turn. You cannot do this more than once each turn. You can only activate this effect once. So for 2 mana, you can make this a 2/1 or a 3/1 rather with flying first strike. This might be the best card in the set from a limited perspective. It's a common, which means you can see four, maybe even 5 of them if you're lucky. It's very, very good. Even the only being able to activate this once per turn isn't completely a downside because it means this card can never get fucking reprisaled. So you can't misplay and forget that they might have a reprisal and get it fucking hit with reprisal. Because Well, I guess you could if you were like gave it like a Keldoran Pride or something and then did it. Um, but just this card on its own cannot be reprisal, even if you activate it as much as you can, which is once. This card is really, really fucking good, specifically in limited. Obviously, there's like nothing to talk about here outside of limited. It is a 2-keyworded ability with a 2-keyworded card with a pump ability, which is pretty on rate even today. But this card is hyper efficient, specifically in limited. It, like I said, it's not good anywhere else, but this card specifically is probably the card that is most responsible for me winning most of my limited games. When I was talking about Carrier Pigeon, I said like I'd only ever dropped a game while running it. And that's because if I am running it, I'm running at least 2 or 3 of them, and I'm also running like 2, 3, or as many of this as I can get my hand on. And this can actually, once you get, because especially with limited at the time, it just gets to a point where everybody has so many lands on, the ground is clogged up, and it's impossible to favorably attack. This can make trading or killing something a lot easier. It can make you just pressure them so much faster. Like you'll have the 2 white mana, or assuming you do relatively later in the game, you can just pump this for free. It's so good. I can't tell you. Like it does not look like much, but this card is really, really fucking good and limited in my experience. I don't know if it's like pack one, pick one, just because it's a common. But depending on what the pack was, I would seriously consider it. I consider it every time I see this, unless I'm like super not into white. But yeah, this card is fucking sick. But this is the last card we're talking about, at least for the white ones. And what a banger to end on. The white cards in this set are actually pretty fucking sick. Like there's not anything really super broken. But specifically from a limited perspective, white is quite powerful, specifically because of the flyers, and the banding guy helps a little bit depending on what the situation is going around. But also there's like there's removal at common, there is better removal at rare. This set actually has a lot going for it if you wanted to play a limited and stuff like that. Most of these cards are not playable outside of limited. You could make an argument for exile. There really isn't much in the white cards, though, outside of limited. There's not like a whole lot that you can go back and look at for playable purposes, at least. The art is so fucking good in this set. There, Phil Foglio stuff is especially fucking hilarious. But yeah, the set is. The cards are interesting. Let's talk about this art before I get too deep into this. There's 2. This is a common. There's 2 copies of it. This was illustrated by Greg Simonson. I think that's another one I've never actually said out loud. So we have new artists in this set, which is always cool to see. The art's fantastic. I really like the art on this. This is another really distinct style that really feels like it feels at home on a Magic card, especially with an old border. I really like this art a lot. This art is also phenomenal, though. I like both of these arts. I really can't pick. I'm very content with both of them. I like that the other one has a closer up to the bird, but the background of this is just so interesting in such a cool and unique way. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's really all I have for the white cards today. They're quite good for limited. The art is really great on them, and there's a couple of interesting pieces. I mean, I also really love carrion pigeons, specifically in limited. Outside of limited, I guess you could talk about inheritance. Inheritance is probably still worth playing in some things, and there's funny things to do with it. And the sustaining spirit, the one that means you just don't die. That one, I mean, you better off just playing a platinum angel these days. But it does have it does have unique traits to it. It is an interesting card. But yeah, that's. I like the white cards in this set. This set is pretty fucking sweet for a lot of reasons. They're definitely starting to like figure out how to make the cards, and even the creatures that like look bad are not super terrible. And some of them are quite good. Like this thing is just awesome. But yeah, anyways, that's all I have for the white cards.